It's the people that are like really interested in reading all the email. When you get indicted for trafficking and then you order 6 drums of sulfuric acid right away, are you really worried about your reverse osmosis plant right after you get indicted? I feel like you're going to jail.
If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
How many of the kids that are being human trafficked actually get discovered? We're finding this 5 here, 6 here, these
but how many actually are there?
How many of them actually are there? Do we know? We don't, right?
Joe Rogan is not someone who gets shaken easily. He's built an entire career on sitting across from people who have seen things most of us can't even imagine. Soldiers, intelligence agents, criminals, scientists, people who've lived through chaos and somehow learned how to explain it. And through all of that,
not everything you don't understand adds up to the worst possible thing it could be.
Rogan has always had the same approach: listen, question, and stay grounded. But there was one moment, one conversation that hit differently. Not loud, not explosive, not even dramatic at first, just a slow shift. The kind where you can actually feel a person realizing something doesn't add up anymore.
That's why I just go with grain of salt. This is just a plausible answer. I don't know that it is the answer. It could even be wrong.
Because this time, it wasn't just stories. It wasn't rumors. It wasn't wild theories from the internet. It was documents, real records, real details, and one specific element that kept coming up: acid. Not metaphorical, not vague. Actual chemical purchases tied to a place that already had too many unanswered questions.
Where are the purchase orders for all of that sulfuric acid before that? Oh, no, I just want to put sulfuric acid into my swimming pool. Muriatic acid.
Well, that's the question. Was there orders for sulfuric acid before this? If they do have a water treatment plant, how does sulfuric acid play into water treatment?
And what nobody expected was watching Joe Rogan go from calm curiosity to something much quieter, something heavier. Because once he started pulling at that thread, everything else started unraveling. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to understand who Joe Rogan is at his core. He didn't build his platform by jumping to conclusions. If anything, he built it by doing the opposite.
Looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck.
It's probably a duck.
For years, he's been careful, almost cautious. He asks questions, but he doesn't push narratives, and that's important.
Jojo is here and we'll walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. We'll walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. Why would jerky walk around? Why would it do that? There is 1 bag of beef jerky in the fridge. Please get it. Also, Blank has more at her place. Please get it from her as well. I suppose it needs to be in a cold, insulated bag. He said he has 6 bags of it in the downstairs freezer. Why would you freeze jerky? Steve needs a 6 to 8 ounce portion of jerky.
Because in today's world, the second you lean too far into speculation, you lose people. You lose credibility. Rogan knows that. That's why whenever something controversial comes up, his first instinct is always the same: slow down. Look for the normal explanation first, because most of the time, there is one. And that mindset is exactly what he brought into this conversation. When the topic of Epstein came up again, not the headlines, not the trial, not the public scandal, but the details, the smaller things, the things buried in documents that most people never read.
No, there's clearly a code with walking over beef jerky.
Rogan didn't jump in saying, "This proves something." He did the opposite. He started asking, what could this mean in a normal context? And for a while, that approach worked, until it didn't. The conversation shifts when someone brings up chemical purchases linked to Epstein's island. At first, it doesn't sound unusual. Acid, especially certain types, is used in a lot of legitimate processes: water treatment, maintenance systems, industrial cleaning. And Rogan immediately goes there. He starts breaking it down logically. Okay, could there be a system on the island that needs this?
Directly at the emails that have been widely circulated pertaining to the age 11, and I have it written down on my notes, the permission to kill email, the Snow White, the littlest girl was naughty, etc., and some of them pertaining to, jerky, whatever that is. Yeah.
And so, and so, just quick follow. What is jerky? Like, what is that exactly?
I think that's the question. I don't know if it's like, and again, like going into specifically just based on what this is, I don't know.
It's a code word.
Context
it has to be a code word. Nobody talks about jerky like this.
Weird. Yeah, it's a code word.
And on the surface, that explanation holds. There are plenty of wealthy properties with private infrastructure, desalination systems, filtration setups. So yes, acid could be used there.
They don't hit send, but they have the password for multiple emails, and they'll just go in, get the message, and then never open or close it, so it's impossible basically to track. It's just like a draft.
Oh, I see. And so other people have the login to the account,
password, and
they check it out through the draft.
And for a moment, that's where the conversation sits. Neutral, rational, controlled. But here's the twist. It's not just the presence of the chemical, it's the timing, the scale, and the lack of pattern before it.
How are these people communicating? Are they doing it through the dark web? Are they doing it through forums? Are they using code? Like, how are they doing this?
I've heard all the above.
Because once you look closer, the question isn't, what is this used for? The question becomes, why now? Why does this show up after everything starts falling apart? Why isn't there a consistent history of similar orders? Why does it appear right when scrutiny increases? And that's when Rogan pauses. Not because someone convinced him.
It's 1 in 4 of these kids. So if it was 25 kids picked up, but 6 or 7 of them were human trafficking. The other 20 or so are like kids that ran away or kids that were being abused. And they found them because they were missing.
Because behind every theory, every detail, every piece of evidence, there are real people, real lives, real consequences. And that's when Rogan stops analyzing and just sits with it. You can hear it, that quiet shift, the kind that doesn't need words, because sometimes the weight of a situation speaks for itself. And for someone like Rogan, who has heard everything, questioned everything, challenged everything, that silence means something. It means the questions don't have easy answers anymore. It means the comfortable explanations aren't enough.
How many of the kids that are being human trafficked actually get discovered? We're finding this 5 here, 6 here, these
but how many actually are there?
How many of them actually are there? Do we know? We don't, right?
We don't.
And maybe that's why this moment stands out so much. Not because of what was proven, not because of what was confirmed, but because of what changed. A man who built his reputation on skepticism, reaching a point where skepticism alone doesn't feel like the full picture anymore.
It's 1 in 4 of these kids. So if it was 25 kids picked up, but 6 or 7 of them were human trafficking. The other 20 or so are like kids that ran away or kids that were being abused. And they found them because they were missing.
And that's the part that stays with you. Not the headlines, not the clips, but that feeling that something deeper might be there, something that hasn't been fully understood yet.
How many of the kids that are being human trafficked actually get discovered? We're finding this 5 here, 6 here, these
but how many actually are there?
How many of them actually are there? Do we know? We don't, right?
We don't.
But because the logic he was using stops working, you can hear it in his voice. That moment where someone realizes the explanation they were holding on to might not be enough anymore. He doesn't jump to conclusions. He doesn't say, this proves anything.
So when you have 85,000 unaccompanied minors showing up in the last 2 years, being let into the country without the sponsor being vetted, DNA checked, background checked, I call it the economy of pedophilia. The United States, we're the demand. 85,000 children, thousands of them are under 5 years old.
But he does something more powerful than that. He stops defending the simple answer. And from there, everything starts to feel different. The island, the operations, the secrecy, it all starts stacking, not as isolated pieces, but as a pattern.
Last year and disappeared. Where did they disappear to?
Because this isn't just about one detail, it's about how many details don't quite fit. And once that thought enters the conversation, it doesn't leave. Then comes the part that really shifts the tone. The realization that whatever was happening was designed not to be obvious, not to leave clear trails, not to make sense at first glance.
If you go to hubs of the world, like Houston, you go to coastal cities where people are actually bringing people into the country, that's exactly where you're going to find a lot of it.
And that changes everything, because now you're not looking for direct answers anymore. You're looking at gaps, at things that should be there but aren't, at patterns that only appear when you step back far enough. And Rogan, who started this conversation trying to keep things grounded, starts asking a different kind of question. Not what is this, but how does something like this stay hidden?
Why is this not a bigger story in mainstream news? This is one of the things that concerns me. I don't understand why you're not seeing this on CNN. This is
every day.
Yeah.
Why aren't we seeing this every day on CNN?
Right. That story right there should be leading on
everything.
Primetime news.
Everything.
Because that's the real mystery. Not just what happened, but how long it stayed out of reach. How many people didn't see it, or maybe didn't want to. The discussion moves into systems, into how communication can happen without being tracked, into how powerful people protect themselves, into how entire structures can exist without ever fully exposing themselves. And suddenly, this isn't just about one island anymore. It's about the possibility of something much bigger.
And then we lose track of who the real enemy is.
Yeah, that's a real enemy, not Ellen.
That's dangerous, right? Not Ellen
being mean to her assistant. Just fuck.
It's so ridiculous.
Just what we care about is so bizarre. Yeah. It's such a symptom of how sick we are as a culture, and that our priorities are so skewed, and that this is sort of accentuated by our addiction to social media.
And that's where Rogan changes, not into someone making claims, but into someone who's no longer comfortable dismissing them either. Because now it's not just about logic, it's about instinct. That feeling when too many things line up in a way that doesn't feel accidental.
Not very much has been, attention has been given by mainstream media. Oftentimes it's more innocent than cynical, perhaps, where it's just, this is too dark. I don't want to expose our audience to this horrific.
But the most powerful moment doesn't come from the chemicals or the documents or even the questions. It comes when the conversation shifts to the human side of all of it.
So there is a more cynical answer to your question, which may be there's people that don't want this exposed because they're involved in it.
Because in the end, Joe Rogan didn't come out of that conversation with answers. He came out with questions, bigger ones, heavier ones, the kind that don't go away once you hear them. And maybe that's what makes this story so unsettling. It's not about what we know, it's about what we don't.
Everyone's told, from Rupert Murdoch, from Fox, to every studio, look, if you touch this thing, you will be out, you will be done. You'll be finished in 3 years.
Because sometimes the most powerful moment isn't when someone loses it, it's when they don't, when they go quiet instead, when they stop talking and start thinking, because that's where the real shift happens. And once you reach that point, there's no going back.
It's an 8-armed octopus, and if you take just out, that arm will grow back. You have to take the head.
And maybe that's the part nobody really talks about. Not the clips, not the headlines, not even the details that first grab your attention, but what stays with you after it's all over. Because once you hear something like this, once you really sit with it, it doesn't just disappear when the video ends. It lingers. It makes you think differently. It makes you question things you never questioned before. And that's exactly what happened to Joe Rogan in that moment. He didn't walk away shouting. He didn't walk away claiming he had all the answers. he walked away quieter. And sometimes that silence says more than anything else ever could.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's terrifying for fathers and mothers. And,
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's like the fact that, or brothers and sisters, the fact that it could be someone close to you.
Yes.
Because when someone who has heard everything, someone who has spent years breaking down stories, challenging ideas, and staying grounded, reaches a point where even they don't have a clean explanation, that should make all of us pause. But here's the twist most people miss. This story isn't really about Joe Rogan. It's about what happens when uncomfortable truths get too close, when things stop feeling like distant headlines and start feeling real.
For me, I have 9 children. At the time, I left the government at 6. And so I can always identify the age of a child with one of my own children. And what my mind was almost automatically doing is I would superimpose my own children's faces and persons onto these children. And that led to the PTSD.
Because it's easy to ignore something when it feels far away. It's easy to scroll past it, to dismiss it, to move on. But when it hits differently, when it feels like something deeper might be going on, you don't just forget it. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the real takeaway isn't about proving every detail or solving every mystery. Maybe it's about paying attention, about not brushing things off so quickly, about asking questions, even when the answers are uncomfortable.
It's not being reported.
Well, you don't
It
see it
is
on
being
CNN. You're not seeing it as like mainstream television news where it's a big subject that gets discussed, that we have a giant problem like this in this country.
Because at the end of the day, the scariest thing isn't what we know, it's what we choose not to look at. And once you start looking, once you really open your eyes to it, there's no going back to not knowing. So now, the question isn't what Joe Rogan saw. The question is, what are you going to do with what you just heard? Are you going to ignore it? Or are you going to start paying attention? Because some stories aren't meant to just entertain you. Some stories are meant to wake you up. And this might be one of them.